Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. Wow, it has been an eon since I've hosted, and I am so happy to be hosting again with my two wonderful guests that I've done stuff with and have known for a little bit. And it is so good to see you all. So good to see you all on this network again, and coming back with a holiday classic. And I'm so excited because this was my first time seeing it. Oops. But I'm so happy to be here with you all. So on this show, if you don't know, we review the latest film drop or throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks and drinks. So I'm your host, if you don't know, Jordyn Orozco, and right now I'm enjoying some Blaze pizza. I got some wonderful like nummy nums, vegan cheese because I'm like lactose intolerant, and if I have a full pizza with like cheese, it's just going to be a bad idea. And so got that all there. And then I have my wonderful little, like, I guess you would call like nomorific Mai Tai, because I always am drinking Mai Tais on this show. So it's great. And I'm excited for this show. But it is good to see you, Eric and Jen, as always. And so happy to see you all for this wonderful stream. Jen, what are you drinking? What are we eating on? What are we not eating on? What are we doing?
I am drinking my good old-fashioned water out of my giant jug because I had a long weekend and I need to rehydrate myself. And what Christmas movie isn't complete without 2-bite cupcakes, which are really 1-bite cupcakes if you try hard enough, and a little smaller than the one I had for Disenchanted, but I have a few.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Disenchanted one was like Alice in Wonderland size. Like it was
finished
like
half. And I
I think I saw your Instagram post where you're like, okay, this is it. I'm done.
Done.
So it looks good though.
It was.
So I love how like the theme of your food is cupcakes because that's amazing, and I aspire for that. Eric, right? Eric, what's going on, man? How are you? It's been a while. What are you chomping on? What are you sipping on?
I'm sipping on a New Belgium Holiday Ale. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe.
Ooh.
Yes, it's delicious. It's like Christmas in a can. And then I've also had a long weekend, so water. Water's my friend right now.
Is that Pedialyte?
No, it's just a water thing.
Okay, it looked like Pedialyte. I was like, you did have a long weekend.
Not that long of a weekend. But and then I just had some like pasta with some meatballs and noodles, like a cream sauce. So it was delicious.
That sounds so good. Well, you had a long weekend because it was what? It was your birthday, right?
It was my birthday.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead.
Wait, what? No, I was gonna say I'm a lovely 34 now, so I'm in mid-30s.
We're the same age. We're the same age. I love it. I was gonna say
babies.
Was it was it your sweet 16? I was gonna say sweet 16.
I wish. I mean, take me back to 16 with everything I know now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Well, it is good to see you both. And I'm so excited to talk about, if you don't know from our backgrounds that we are talking about Disney's The Muppet Christmas Carol. Let me just say, I am a sucker for any Christmas Carol story. I love Christmas Carol. I think it is probably one of the most impactful, I think, Christmas stories. And like, it's been interpreted in so many ways, right? One of my favorites, because I love horror and I love like being like, oh, chill to the bone and all that, was FX just came out with like theirs with Guy Pearce, and theirs was like super like dark and all that stuff, and I loved it. But I also love iterations like the Muppet Christmas Carol, which I just saw for the first time. Or A Christmas Carol, right? Like ones that are, that are just out and, out there that sort of interpret it just exactly how it is. But what I loved about this wonderful and amazing film is it brings two sort of like classics together. You have the Muppets, right? And then you have A Christmas Carol. You combine them and you get the magic of just sort of like this like humor that like, so for the first time watching it, I was cracking up the entire time. Like there's just like little jokes, obviously, that I think like Brizzo, like you were saying, Jen, earlier before we streamed, was like there's little clips that if you don't catch, like you're like, oh, like I didn't catch that. But every single one with like him and Gonzo, I was just dying laughing. I was dying laughing. And then just in general, like the spirits and all the Muppets that are doing that, I think it just brought the whole Muppet sort of spirit to to the screen where kids can enjoy it, but also like it's an entire family film where you get you get humor for that kids are gonna be like, oh, that was hilarious. Because I was watching it with my niece who's in, oh gosh, I think she's in fourth grade or fifth grade, and we were just like watching it together. She was cracking up at the same places that I was cracking up, and I'm like, it's a great film, and so I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about. So this was my first time watching it. Let's talk about your all first time watching it. Eric, let's start with you. When did you watch it? What kind of nostalgia did it bring up?
I've watched this since I was a little kid. I think since it originally came out. So it's always kind of that thing every Christmas I have to watch like this and like Love Actually, which we're doing later, and all of that. There's those like holiday like staples that you have to watch, and this is my version of Christmas Carol that no matter what, I always watch this one because it's funny. It's aged very well, I think. As I've grown up, and like I get like other little things different now that I'm older that I may not have understood when I was little. But it's fantastic, and always just brings me such joy to watch it, especially like Tiny Tim and freaking Kermit the Frog and everything like that. Like you have to love it. You have to love it. It's a classic.
It's just, yeah, it's so cute, and I think that it's done in a way where like you don't even you don't even realize that it was done back in like I think it was the 90s, right? Like 93.
30 years ago.
Sorry, I got a piece of pineapple stuck in my throat. So Jen, let's talk about your first experience with the Christmas Carol.
Oh, I was 17 and I saw it when it came out. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater when it came out. Probably a bunch of us from school. When I've seen it so many times over the years because it is just such a wonderful, telling of this particular Christmas tale, which is so steeped in our culture, in the British culture, which they actually reference at one point with a little joke in the movie, And I loved literature when I was in high school. That was my favorite class. I went on to be an English major. So I've read a lot of Charles Dickens. And it's pretty grim. And so they took this story, which if you just read the book is really kind of grim and depressing, but has such a great moral to it. And they made it accessible to so many more ages. Now, this is my favorite version of the Christmas Carol. My second favorite is Scrooge. So
I love Scrooge. So
that is, yeah, there's so many good versions of it. But this one, Scrooge is also a little dark. Little darker than this. Nothing like that Guy Pearce one. I actually couldn't. There was one thing they got into, one topic, and I'm like, nope, done. I can't. It's too much. But yeah.
If you like the versions, watch the newer one with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell, the Spirited. It switches a little bit, which I quite enjoyed.
And it's a musical, right? So right up my alley. Yeah. No, I definitely want to add that to the rotation this year of my Christmas movies. It's funny because I'm very much like Christmas until after Thanksgiving. Because it's November 1st, everyone's like, trees are up, this is up. I'm like, no, come on, the pumpkin's still good. We're good. So this movie is what puts me into that really Christmassy place, and that's when the Santa hat comes out. So I watched it 4 times today in the background while I was working.
I loved it. Yeah, and it's I think that's like one of my only critiques of it is it's really short, right? Like it's like a really condensed short version of A Christmas Carol, but I think it's because it's geared towards kids, right? Like it's geared towards the younger generation, which their attention span is going to be less than ours, right? Like they don't want to sit there for 2 hours, like wondering why he is just a bad person when it's like all this surface level stuff. I also want to acknowledge that I literally almost died on Nom Talk Network. So you're welcome, Steph. I choked. I literally was like dying on a pineapple. I don't know why. But anyway, we're talking about like a kid's movie, and I'm like, I almost died. But I think, I think you all have so I wish I had seen this when I was a kid. I think it would have made a really huge difference in, you know, how, because, growing up, these characters, you know who Kermit the Frog is, you know who Miss Piggy is, right? Like, I knew who Sam the Eagle was. I knew who Gonzo was. I knew who Animal was, right? But then, like, I was at the age where it was like a mesh, like, it was like a mold between like Sesame Street and Muppets, and I couldn't tell the difference, right? You're like, I don't know what all these things are. I just know that they do these wonderful and awesome and amazing things. Um, and then, watching this now, though, you can kind of see like the staple of what the Muppets was, right? Like the staple of Jim Henson, the staple of, because I believe this was made after he died. Is that correct?
Yes, because it's dedicated to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like this is something that that was, obviously put on after, he had passed away, but it still kept to the spirit. It still kept to what Jim Henson was and what I remember as the Muppets, right? Like as a kid. So I think it's really great. So just some comments from the audience. So the Orbital Bunny, who I know is Mary, I love you, Mary, says, "Yay, happy birthday, Eric." Stephanie says, "Please, no dying here, thank you." Yeah, no, you're welcome. I saved myself. I just choked. I hacked myself to life, and it was really great. So, couple things that I want to get to. So the first thing I want to get to before we even discuss, logistics is, so on this show, because I haven't done a review in a while. Actually, yes, I have. I did the Disenchanted and the Enchanted one. We rate everything out of 5 popcorn buckets. And so I want to get everybody's popcorn buckets before we talk about the whys and the logistics. So Jen, what would you rate 0 out of 5 popcorn buckets this movie?
An overflowing 4 with butter. That's what I give this one. It could have been longer because I have read the book. I have seen other versions. There's a couple. Sorry, my cat just jumped in my lap. There's a couple other, there's a couple elements they maybe could have worked in and still kept it light enough for kids. But on the whole, it's great music by Paul Williams, and the puppets are, they're at their best. They have some of the best voices, and they got such a good Kermit considering Jim Henson had passed. Yeah. And I think he would have loved it. So I give it 4.
Definitely. And Eric, what would you rate this movie?
I will also give it an overwhelming 4 because, like I said, like you were saying, there's stuff that can be built on, and they can make it a little bit longer. But so cute.
He has a mustachio.
He does.
He's got a mustachio
and lots of opinions. Come on, buddy. Go on.
Hell yeah! It's because of the mustache.
Well, you just need to get him a monocle now.
Don't tempt me.
Do it.
But no, a 4 because there are stuff. It could be longer. Like you said, it can dive into the story a little bit more. But overall, being a musical Muppets movie, just bringing light to that, it gets a 4 from me. Yeah,
and I also, we're all the same across the board. I would also rate it a 4, because it wasn't my favorite iteration of A Christmas Carol, but it was a strong, like second. Only because I didn't know it was a musical. I actually did kind of like think it was going to be a musical, but then I didn't. And then I watched it, and then the first song came on, and I was like, it's a musical. And I was like, great. Like, this is absolutely great. And what made it awesome is that all the characters that I was used to seeing in like any sort of Muppets thing came out in like the first song, and you're like, this is awesome. This is great. You got the rats, you got the mice, you got animals. And then like at the end, you got the lobsters, you got like every single, like it literally gave me everything that I wanted in a Muppets movie, and with a Christmas, right? Like added to it. But I also I agree with Jen. I think one of my critiques is that it could have been longer, but also like my rebuttal to my own critique is like, how much are you gonna have kids sit in an audience and like watch this movie, right? Like they're not gonna, but I do.
Kids nowadays watch Frozen over and over and over again. This could be a little bit longer.
I mean, absolutely true. But like back then, like they weren't like, I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't a parent back then, but Yeah.
Oh, they were
like
that way back then. My sister's 9 years younger than me. They were that way back then.
Oh yeah.
like, yeah, they were.
I mean,
But yeah,
even looking at like Jim Henson's other things like Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal and everything,
Mhm.
those were still a little bit darker, and I watched those over and over again.
Mhm.
Oh
Well,
my
not
God,
Dark Crystal.
Labyrinth. Yeah. No, Labyrinth over and over again. I'm like, Jennifer Connelly, I love you. That dress that you had at the end, I want it. Want as a little like as a little gay boy, like closeted, like, and like didn't know that I was gay. I was like, I want that dress. Why do I want that dress? Right? Like it's just like a weird thing.
Because
But
it's
yeah,
amazing.
it's
That's an
fucking
amazing.
awesome. And then David Bowie, excuse me,
Hello,
like
sexual.
androgynous. Yeah, like
Yeah.
who are you? But anyway, we're talking about Muppets. But yeah, it's solid four. It could have been longer. And there were I feel like uh oh my God, I forgot his name. No, is it Michael Craig? No,
Michael Caine.
Michael. Thank you.
Kane, yeah.
Michael Caine's character, he developed way too quickly. I was like, like
Mhm.
but I get it. It's a kids' film. Like they're they gotta speed things along. And then we'll talk about the spirits a little bit later. But yeah, so we're all agreeing.
Mhm.
4 out of 5 popcorn buckets. So, let's talk about the story just in general. We all know sort of like, well, some of us do. We all kind of know the story of A Christmas Carol. So you have Ebenezer Scrooge, who is just a horrible person. He hates Christmas. He hates everybody. He thinks that being nice is I mean, like, right, like I'm gonna get into my like little like masculinity. Like, he thinks being nice is a form of weakness, and like, you can't be nice to anybody. You gotta work hard for all of your things. And then he doesn't even take pleasure in the fact that he has all this money. He just hoards it, and like, all this stuff, right? So everybody that works for him is, they're decent people. They want decent things in life, and he's like, you're not getting them. You work for me, like this is what you're doing. And then there's this one individual, and in this case it's Kermit, who basically is like, hey sir, like I need Christmas off, like to spend with my family. And Ebenezer's like, no, like you're gonna work for me on Christmas. And he's like, bitch, like, no, I'm not. And then, but in his head, but in reality he's like, well, we kind of have this thing also, like nobody's going to be open. Also, you're not going to really make money that day. You're probably going to lose it. So you probably should give me the day off. And what I loved about this is they have like little rats that are like working for him, and like, like doing all that stuff. And like Kermit's their like spokesperson. And then so he's like, all right, fine, take the day off. And like, all right, cool. And so we learned basically that Ebenezer Scrooge had business partners, which I think is like in the main thing, and like they died, and basically Ebenezer takes over the entire company. And his partners come back to haunt him, and basically say, well, and they're in chains, right? And the chains basically are a representation of all the earthly greed that his partners have sort of like acquired and like have basically passed on to. And that's the thing that is like keeping them, sort of like in purgatory. I don't want to say in hell because that's not where they're at, but and it ends up being the critics in the Muppets, which I loved. I loved from the jump. I was like, perfect, absolutely. They had their own song, and I was like, this is absolutely amazing. And then they basically tell him, because they are the precursor to his entire night, that he's going to be visited by a ghost. And he's visited basically by 3 ghosts who are Christmas present, Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. In many iterations, it's like Christmas that comes to be, Christmas that is, and then Christmas that has been, and all the other things. I do want to say that I think that Christmas past was creepy.
Terrifying.
Creepy, like you're a doll. Like I don't think you're a doll and realize that like you're a creepo. But yeah, just a little creepy. But basically Ebenezer has this journey with these. I'm just summoning it up really quickly. Ebenezer has this journey of realizing that he is he's a bad person, and he was born like he kind of grew into this way. I love that Sam Eagle was the mentor, was the headmaster. I thought that was amazing. And then I loved how Gonzo came in and was like, hey, you have to change this. And he was like, oh, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then he looked, and then it's like the little things. He looked and was like, Where'd he go? Oh, okay, never mind. And it was just like the funniest thing. I think that there's the funniest thing. And then visited by Christmas present, whose future learns that if he doesn't change his ways, things will end up bad. And I think it's important to point out that Tiny Tim was a turning point for Ebenezer. He's like, I have to save this kid. Like this kid is, the good in the world, and he has to save it. And it ends with Ebenezer being happy and sort of spreading the Christmas joy. And I loved this version of Ebenezer because it was like in Muppet world, and like he got a turkey with Bean Bunny, who I love. I've always loved Bean Bunny. Bean Bunny's been like my favorite. He's just like a scraggly little bunny, and I'm like, I love you. And hires him to get a turkey, and like he goes around singing, and I just think it's like the best ending. I'm not gonna lie to you, I almost cried like 4 times in this. And it was just so cute. And I was like, this is the cutest thing. So let's go to you, Jen. What did you think about the story in general? I know it was kind of short. Do you think this was a good fair representation? Do you think it was good for kids? What are your thoughts?
I think it was good for kids. It hit the notes that it needed to hit, without getting too deep into the trenches of what's really wrong with Tiny Tim and what really happened to Ebenezer when he was younger. But you're right. If that Ghost of Christmas Past, I would have changed my life immediately just to get her to go away. I would have been the best person on earth. She was scary.
Mm-hmm.
I hated her face.
Creep up.
Yeah. And actually, the movie used to be a little longer because there's a song they cut out that they're supposed to restore to it, but apparently Disney Plus doesn't have that version. That is when he is engaged to Belle. There is a song she sings that actually plays over the credits now on Disney Plus, but it's by a different artist. It's called When There's Love or something like that. Mm-hmm. I didn't listen to the credits. I'm not gonna lie. I just started the movie over. So, but no, I love the same thing. Bean Bunny is one of my favorites. And when he's like, be serious, when he tells him to go buy the turkey, he's like, what? Come on. I like, my favorite Muppets are like the minor Muppets. Bean Bunny.
Yeah.
Pepe the King Prawn is my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rizzo, light the lamp, not the rat. Light the lamp, not the rat. He's just, I just love him. And no, I thought this was a good way to tell the story. And I like that they included Charles Dickens as a character and kind of as the narrator, because that might stick with kids. I was already reading Charles Dickens by the time this movie came out because I was old. But, well, I'm old. I was 17, so I was older. But that might just stick in a kid's head, and then when they get a little older and they're in high school, and then you have to read Hard Times, which is another tough one, but you're like, oh wait, this is a Christmas Carol guy. So I think it's good at planting those little seeds, but also telling a good high level Christmas story with a good moral, but fun music and funny animal characters.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a wrench in this. Some person named Timspiration redeemed talk in third person. So except Jen would like to sub third person with Kermit impression. So Eric, we're gonna go to you, and you're gonna tell us why, or you're gonna tell us about the third. You're gonna tell us about the Christmas Carol, but you have to do it in Kermit's voice.
I don't even know. How do you do Kermit voice?
Well, you got to do it.
I know. Hold on. Give me a second.
Anyway, so what did you think about the story? Okay, look, while I'm asking, think about it. What did you think about the story? What did you think about it for kids? Did you think that overall, like John said, it hit certain points?
This is hard.
Do it. Just do it.
Piggy. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm going to stick with here. I appreciated it because it changed the story and made it shorter, but also Gonzo's one of my favorites. And so them making them into Piggy. So them making it Charles Dickens and putting him in the story was wonderful. I thought it uplifted the story. I don't know. I'm like this weird French, like, hey, this is not Kermit the Frog, but hey. but it really added to the story for me. But I loved every minute of it. Like what they did, it just needs to be a little longer, like we said. So, and I'm throwing it back to you, Jordyn.
Crap, that means I have to do it. Okay. I used to do Kermit the Frog. I'm also nasally. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay. So I think that
There we go.
I think that the story that we had on was actually really good, and I think that we can do better when it comes to storytelling with kids. And it's a little different. Let's go ahead and go to the casting. Let's talk about the casting here. I think that doing Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge was great. I think it was really awesome, and I had a really good time as Kermit the Frog here. To interact with him, he was very sweet, and he went on to do amazing things. Um, let's see. How did you feel about the casting of all of this, especially with the Muppets mixing with humans and doing all that stuff? Let's go to you, Eric, again with all that stuff. Go ahead, Eric.
You're really helping me on this one because it's giving me a point to go off of. So yeah, the casting in this I thought was really great. I mean, I was in it, Kermit the Frog here. But I thought they did a really good job at integrating and not making it seem like they were different, which I always love about Muppet movies because there's no difference between Muppet and human, and everybody just goes along with it, and it's fantastic. The casting with Michael Caine was great, and all the puppeteers, like always, do an amazing job. So yeah, Jennifer, we're gonna pass this on to you now.
Yeah. Kermit the Frog. That's all I got. I think how to do this voice constantly. Kermit the Frog. I think the scene at the nephew's house was a good example of what Eric was talking about with the Muppet and human interaction. I don't know what Kermit said. I've listened to him all day today and I can't get his voice in my head.
I know.
What do you sound like?
As soon as it said it, I was like, oh.
So like by being like a 12-year-old boy going through puberty, up and down, or
Kermit the Frog. You have to okay. The way that I do it is you have to thrust your throat in the back of your throat, almost like you're choking, and then you just kind of have to do that. Okay, hold on. I have to say this. The Orbital Bunny said you sound more like Yoda because you're nasally right now. Yeah. I blame my allergies, okay?
Wouldn't Yoda and Miss Piggy sound more alike? Because those were both Frank Oz.
Oh, yeah. They're good. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Orbital Bunny is so cute. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jennifer.
That's okay.
Also, staff producer, can you tell me when we have to stop talking like this? But go ahead, Jennifer.
So...
Are we on acid? Like, what's going on?
I don't even know. I've had so much sugar this weekend. I forgot what I was going to say because I'm thinking of the voice so much. Characters, casting. The casting is really good. I think that.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Oh,
we're
thank
good.
you,
can talk normal.
Okay, good. So Michael Caine is an icon. I used to work for Blockbuster, and we, at the end of days for that particular company, and when we would be closing a store, that was fun. We would be going through cleaning the movies, and I swear to you, every third movie he was in. He's in everything. He's just, he's been acting since before I was born. I'm pretty sure he's going to outlive us all and keep acting. But he was great for this. He has that classical training where he can, really interpret Dickens and Shakespeare and all the greats, but he can still bring a little fun to it because he did, he got into it, and yeah, his character development was really quick, but that's not his fault. And he can, I don't know if he can sing or not. I wasn't real sold on his singing in this, but he tried. He put his heart in it. So I thought that was great casting. And I mean, look, we knew it wasn't Jim Henson doing Kermit's voice. You didn't need to read the credits to know that, but the guy did a good job.
Yeah.
And it was before Brian Henson took over as Kermit's voice. It was some other gentleman whose name I didn't really recognize. But yeah, as always, the puppeteering is always just so magical to me when I watch anything with the Muppets, and then you see something behind the scenes and there's like three people like twisted up like they're playing, Twister, and they've got sticks and there's hands up and puppets, and it I don't know how they do it without falling over.
So let's see. Heartless, redeemed, hydrate. Everybody hydrate.
We need to after that Kermit business.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
Heartless also said, "Thank you for that, Tim." Yeah, Tim, you're welcome.
Yeah, Tim.
Apparently I'm Yoda the frog.
Yoda the frog here.
That was a great Kermit.
Yoda the frog here. Oh, the frog Yoda is here. Yeah. I definitely agree. So I do have to say what I loved also about this movie, speaking of casting, like we'll talk about the Muppet casting, is every single puppet that was in the Muppets was in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single one, even if it was like super minor, right? Like I'm talking about like like I totally forgot about the ghost of the Christmas Present until he showed up, and I was like, oh yeah, like this dude is huge, right? And I was like, this is a Muppet, right? Like this was an actual thing. And then just the smaller Muppets that sort of appeared in the entire film, I was like, this is amazing. Like I remember all of this, like I remember all these people, and I remember exactly how they were, right? Like when I was a kid. And so it was awesome. And I think that like the selection, but also just this was a really good introduction. Like if you've never seen the Muppets at all, this was a really good introduction to sort of like the Muppets in general. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching it and just sort of seeing, like, even if you weren't like, I don't want to say like a main Muppet or a side Muppet, like even just like getting like exposed to that was awesome. How did we feel about that? Like, do we feel like this is a really good mix of like all the Muppets? Do we feel like this is a really good introduction? Eric, let's start with you. How did we feel about all the puppets that were used in this?
I think this is a very good introduction to the Muppet world that they do, and Jim Henson Company, everything like that. Almost every time, like this Muppet Treasure Island, they throw as many of their Muppets as they possibly can to fill in every single area. So, like Gonzo, Rizzo, Meeker as one of the guys who was collecting money for the orphanage. Like that was just great.
Hello, Meeker.
Yeah, just me. But it's great to get introduced. One, not only children, people like you just saw this movie as well. Just give them that like little bit of nostalgia and just be like, oh, there's my favorite one. There's my favorite one. So they always do a brilliant job with it. Even nowadays, like with the movies that they just came out with, they still do a fantastic job of bringing in the Muppets and making them actual and giving them funny quotes and all of that.
Yeah, I think my whole thing with it's Beaker, and then I forget the main scientist, the green guy.
Oh, I can't remember his name either.
Dr. Benson Honeydew.
There we go.
Is that what his name is?
I'm 98% sure it's Dr. Benson
He looks
Honeydew.
like a honeydew. That's hilarious. But he's got like no eyes, but like always wears glasses. And the fact that both of them were like in like, and then he's like, oh, we would like to blah. And I was like, I love you. I already love you. I missed you. How's it going? But then Beaker. And like Beaker's one of those Muppets that you can't forget, right? Because he doesn't speak, but it's like you remember the sound and the voice and everything that he does. And yeah, I just think the casting and like everything, like as far as the puppets went, is absolutely amazing. Jen, what'd you think?
So I grew up watching the Muppets on TV with the Muppet Show, the original OG Muppet Show, which I want to say is on Disney Plus or Hulu. And if you want to, experience some of the 70s,
it's on Disney Plus.
And there's hosts where I'm like, so Sandy Duncan. Now, you guys know her, but like my kids wouldn't know if I said Sandy. They'd be like, who? I saw Sandy Duncan when I was 5 years old as Peter Pan on stage. So when I watched that episode, when I decided to watch some of the old Muppets, a couple months ago, I was like, oh. And then the guy that played Mr. Belvedere was Captain Hook and Mr. Darling. So it was it's like, took me on this whole nostalgia trip. But no, I grew up with the Muppets. I love the Muppets. I loved the movie with Amy Adams and Jason Segel that they did some years ago. The sequel was okay. It wasn't as good as the first one. And even the new shows they have some new Muppet shows. I saw that they had a new, it's called like Letters to Santa or something, but it's a new Muppets Christmas special. And I didn't want to watch it today. I just wanted to keep watching the Christmas Carol. So I'm going to watch that tomorrow. Yeah, but I was like, oh, what's this? No, don't get distracted. No,
I saw that.
Yeah. And I just, like I said, I like the minor characters. I love Bean. I love the prawn. Pepe he's my Disney Plus icon. So, I love him. He's so weird. So he just is. So for me, it hit on so many levels because I literally grew up watching the Muppets, and here I am 47 and I still get that same reaction because they've kept the character so true to who the character's been the entire time they've existed. Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah. I thoroughly got excited when I saw Swedish Chef at the party. And I was like, yes, I needed to see Swedish Chef. Thank you. And he was like, how is it? And then he was just but I love how always Swedish Chef's hands are humans, and I love it. Yeah. I freaking love it. And then Animal had to make an appearance, and it was just absolutely. I was like, yes, Animal, absolutely, and like tells everybody to be quiet. And then Fozzie Bear was just like, oh, okay, here we go. And I was like, oh, I love it. And even though it was like a brief, moment in the movie, it was one of those things where it was like, these are the Muppets that like I grew up with. These are the Muppets that I remember. These are the Muppets that like shows like Family Guy and other shows make fun of, right? Like it's just great, and I just loved it. And it was absolutely amazing. So let's move on to so I know we've sort of talked about, and you, Jen, have specifically talked about iterations, and also that it's based off of Charles Dickens' novel, right? Like which is A Christmas Carol, and it's very dark, right? Like a lot of iterations of A Christmas Carol have gone that route, right? Like the FX version that I was talking about, where it just goes to a place where I was just like, oh, this is deep, but I kind of love it because it's like dark, and like that's just the kind of movies that I like. But then also it's been taken to a point where it's like Muppets and it's like cute, like we know it's like that's what it is, to things like Scrooge, right, where it's like, you get Bill Murray, you get like all these other people that have contributed to sort of like the iterations of A Christmas Carol. What do you think? So first question, let me ask both of you, what are your favorite iterations of A Christmas Carol, if you have any? And if so, why? Let's start with you, Jen.
So obviously I love this one. I love Scrooge. It never gets old, but for that real like experience, the one-man show version that Patrick Stewart does. And the reason why is because Patrick Stewart, and I don't think we need anything more than that for a reason. He's just he's so phenomenal in everything. And I think he also did a version where he's just Scrooge and there's other actors, but I have listened to the audio of his one-man show version of it, and I don't know, there's just something about his voice that it doesn't matter what role he's doing. He's the only way I'll watch Star Trek. If he's on it, then I might watch it. But no, I think that is my favorite serious iteration for sure. Scrooged is my favorite comedic iteration because there's something about her with the toaster oven just wham, when she just beating the crap out of him. And he deserves it. But I think in a way, to me, Scrooged and so Muppet Christmas Carol is everything Muppets that we love with Christmas Carol. Scrooged is all of the 80s comedians and SNL people and everything that I also grew up watching. So to me, they're very similar. Obviously, one's a little more adult than the other. But even then, I watched that movie when it came out in 88, maybe somewhere around there. And I watched it when I was that age. Parental restrictions were different back then. I could watch pretty much anything. So, I was a little more strict with my kids. But no, they watched Walking Dead when they were like 7. I can't really say
Loved
that.
it.
So,
Love it.
Terrorize them. They're great kids, though. They're not kids anymore. But yeah, I would have to say my favorite, if I had to sit down and watch one, it would be with the one with Patrick Stewart, and then Scrooged, and then this version.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I forgot to say the Orbital Bunny redeemed hydrate, so we all got to hydrate.
Mary making sure we're staying hydrated.
Thank you.
I don't need anymore. Just kidding. Yeah, and I love that. So I have to watch that because I've never seen that, the one man one, and I am looking forward to that. Eric, same question. What are your favorite iterations of A Christmas Carol, and why?
This one, obviously, and we've already talked about it pretty much at length. But one of them that I think is slept on a lot. It's called Ghosts of Girlfriends Past with Matthew McConaughey and Jennifer Garner. So it's A Christmas Carol, but it like updates it to where it's his previous girlfriends that are coming back, and he's just like this player and everything like that. It's a very interesting take on it because it was newer and fresher. But I watch it all the time because it's funny, and Michael Douglas as like this pimp almost Ghost of Christmas Past is freaking hilarious.
Yeah,
those are like the two.
I was just like, I haven't seen that. I would love to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's not the best movie, but it's fun.
Yeah. I will say this definitely made it up there for me in like my Christmas Carol like iterations. I think this is a very this is a thing that I would show my kids first, where I'd be like, hey, so if you want to watch A Christmas Carol, like this is, really good. Like you should watch this. And then as they grow up, like introduce them to like different other iterations of like, I don't want to say the harsher realities, but like more of like this is what happens when somebody takes greed and like all that, all that stuff, one way. And I always love a good scare in the end, right? Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. The specific characters of the spirits, right? And these are always my favorite characters in any Christmas Carol sort of stories that ever get told. I'm always looking at like what the spirits are, how they teach, Ebenezer, like who he is and how they school him. And I think honestly, like this was probably one of the best iterations of the spirits because, usually like Christmas Past is like, hey, like this is what it is. And like cool, like and not cool, not like hippie or anything, but like, hey, like just cool, like this is what it is. And then you get Christmas present that's like, hey, I'm happy, like we're cool, we're fun, we're getting things done, and like all that stuff. And then Christmas Future, my favorite, is like, I'm gonna scare the shit out of you right now. And then like it's just it all ends for him, right? I thought Christmas Future did less than a good job in this one. I was like, all you did was point, like you didn't really say anything. And also like he realized before, but then also realized the same thing after. Like, I don't know how I'm feeling with that. I did like the imagery though, and it was a very Jim Henson imagery of, Christmas Future. So let's talk about the spirits, right? Jen, me and you, we're on the same page. Christmas Past, gotta go.
No.
That was creepier than Christmas Future.
It was the lack of facial features, I think. Like just nice. but kind of what you were saying about how Christmas Past the spirit generally is, there was just this little like they want to be the one to turn him. You can almost feel they want to be that, and they're like, there's a compassion and a warmth to this particular version of the Ghost of Christmas Past, and the worry is so present in her or his voice. It's very ambiguous. So in their voice, it's, she's just kind of like, let's go, come on, look, this is a little Ebenezer, look, and oh, you were so cute, but now you're a jerk. And so it was yeah, the compassion came across very, very strongly. And most iterations, Scrooge notwithstanding, because that doesn't count as far as how to judge the spirits by, because she's not compassionate at all.
Yeah.
I have seen a version. No, it is this version. I keep thinking the big floppy guy from Sesame Street, Snuggles.
Snuffleupagus?
Not Snuffleupagus. There's another, the big one, and he's got yarn and the big orange nose, and he might be a Muppet. I'll have to look it up. I always, sometimes if I don't watch this for a few years, in my head, he's the Ghost of Christmas Present. He's just a big, joyful guy. And the Ghost of Christmas Present is very joyful. He, in my brain, he's kind of almost like they took a Santa image and made it younger.
Yeah.
With the hair, and then to me, the Ghost of Christmas, Sweetums. Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Sweetums. Cuddles. I don't know. The Ghost of Christmas Present to me always really evokes heavy imagery of what we think of as death. Mm-hmm. Because basically that's what he's got. You're going to die alone. So here's the most stark imagery of that we can give you. So yeah, it's nice to see through the different stories, though the same themes for each spirit do carry through, and they captured that really well here.
Yeah. I think, I think your point is like valid. So like, I think one of the things that I liked about the Guy Pearce version is that like every spirit that came before the next one, they were like trying to make him realize, like every single time they were like, hey, we're going to make you realize this shit in a dark way. And then they're like trying, and then they're like, so what did you learn? And he's like, well, fuck this shit, I didn't learn shit. And they're like, no, like, hey, so we have like 2 minutes together, like, can you tell me what? And he's like, okay, maybe I was this, but like whatever. And then they're like, okay, well, too bad, here comes the next one. And so it was like the thing where it's like, you're right, they are trying to teach him a certain lesson, and he's like not learning like what they need him to learn. And then it's like, okay, well, clearly you need the shit scared out of you. And then it like, it continues to everything. Eric, what did we think about the spirits? What did we think about how they acted with Ebenezer, with what they needed to teach him in this?
The Ghost of Christmas Past, I agree with you guys, can go because she's frightening. They're frightening. My favorite has always been the Ghost of Christmas Present, just like how jolly and like over the top he is. Plus, when you see him in the room and they open up the doors and he's just like on that throne of food, and he's just like, hey,
and he's like huge. Yeah. He's like, drink me, and then you're like, oh. Yeah.
But no, I love that version. But I agree with you. Like I love seeing each character kind of like almost get him to learn that stuff and see kind of like that. Okay, you're not getting it yet. Like you could tell that they're trying to push him. Which a lot of iterations that I've seen as of late, I do see that, but this one just did it in more. I like how they did it in a kiddie friendly way. Mm-hmm. For kids who are watching it to understand, like, oh, okay, so that is why they're trying to like tell him that he was a bad person and why he was a bad person. So I liked how they like dumbed it down a little bit for the kiddos out there so they can understand.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this is like the Christmas Carol movie where you're like, hey, so you see how he was kind of like being a jerk, right? Mm-hmm. Like you see how he was kind of doing all these things, and even in the beginning when he's sort of like yelling and disciplining, his workers, and like, you're like, oh, this dude's got something going on, right? Like, and then, but for me, like, so one of the things that I actually was wanting to see was like more character development of Ebenezer Scrooge. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't, like, it happened too quickly and there wasn't really an explanation. And maybe because I'm not a kid anymore, I don't really like think in that way where I'm just like, oh, that doesn't explain why this happened or why he was like this, but then this happened, right? But like for me, I was like, you really turned around really quickly and really like you didn't really learn the actual lesson. You just kind of became happy. And then you were like, fuck it, I'm not gonna be mad. Here's a turkey, right? Like it just kind of became a weird thing for me in the end. And I was like, okay, like I love it. I love what's going on. I love this. I love that the Muppets are singing and everybody got together at Kermit and Piggy's house and had like a huge feast and it was great. But there was still sort of like well, why did you transform, right? Like there wasn't that like connection between like why versus like you used to be this way, right? And so that's something that I think that like maybe kids that are more a little bit more, I would say like I don't want to say evolved because that's not the right word, but are a little bit more in tune with sort of like how emotions work and how things happen. Like they'd probably question that and be like, hey, like why, what's going on here, right? And I don't know, I don't have kids, but maybe Jen can and like jump in. But like, I mean, I don't know. Like it was more the character development thing.
Okay.
I think. But yeah, so any last minute thoughts, any last minute sayings about this? Would you recommend it to people to watch if they haven't watched it? Would you recommend it? Is this like a thing that they need to keep in their, cabinets? Wait, Jen. No, it's awful. Let's start with you, Eric.
Yeah, no, I definitely like with all my nieces and nephews do show them this movie. Like I say, I at least watch it every Christmas just because it is so joyous and nice and the world of the Muppets and Jim Henson when they were like on the top, like doing a whole lot of puppetry. So this is a great aspect of that. But yeah, it's just a good movie. I loved it. But yeah, no, show it to everybody. Everybody you can. Even people who don't want to see it, show it to them.
Show it to the dead. Show it to the unborn. Show it to everybody.
Everybody. I'm going to make my cat watch it after this. Yeah.
Wait, me too. I'm just going to
now you have
up
to
on
have
her
a
perch.
mindful.
Yeah, I'm just going to get her up on her perch and be like, watch this shit. If you fall asleep, I'm going to slap you awake.
I'm going to wake you
Jen,
up.
Yeah, right? Like, wake the fuck up. Jen, what about you? What are your last minute thoughts on this film? What are your suggestions?
Everyone should watch this movie at least once or once a year, twice a year. It's a great staple. It's fun to have on in the background when you have family over, whatever the case may be. It's anybody. It's like Legos, ages, 3 to 99 can enjoy this movie. And it's the kind of thing, it's the one version I can think of that you can watch it with anyone in your family and not be like, oh, at one scene, if you're 10 and grandma's in the room and something's happening and you're like, I don't know what that means. No, but it's just an all ages, great holiday film. It's a classic. It stood up for 30 years. Look at that. Most films don't do that.
No. Yeah, so as a first timer, I thought this film was amazing. I thought it was beautifully done. It brought back so many memories from childhood and it evoked so many emotions in me, right? Like where it's like you get comedy, but then you also get introduced to like Tiny Tim and like you see Ebenezer have like a guttural reaction to it, right? And like those of us that do know the story know what's wrong with Tiny Tim, right? Like we do know that, there are things that are beyond, right, like our control to help with that. But in the end, it's Ebenezer realizing that like, okay, cool, like this guy that works for me has a life and has a family that he has to care for. And I loved the part where like he showed up and he acted like old Ebenezer and then Miss Piggy was like, oh, I'm gonna fuck with you, bitch. He's like, let me tell you what I feel. Let me tell you what I think. And then he's like, I'm gonna raise your salary. And Miss Piggy was like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna raise these fists. And then she was like, oh. And then she like shoved Kermit in front, and it was like the best fucking thing.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, Miss Piggy. I was like, get it for your man. Hell yeah. And then she was like, oh, my bad. Nothing. I'm okay. But I loved that part. I thought it was amazing. And then basically like he brings all of the Muppet characters into their house to have a wonderful and amazing Christmas dinner. I screamed when I saw the lobsters in the window. I thought that was the fucking best thing ever. And it was like the last scene before they're like, okay, we're done. And I was like, yeah, it's the lobsters. I was like, absolutely. But I think just in general, this film hits on so many different aspects of the human soul, like emotions and everything. And I feel like it's one of those movies where I got done watching it and I was happy. Like it was just like a happy film, and it's just like a beautiful, lovely, wonderful, beautiful, awesome film. And so thank you, Muppet Christmas Carol, for giving me a wonderful top to my night. And something that I definitely want to show my mom who hasn't watched it. She's like, I don't think I've seen it. I was like, okay, we gotta watch it because this shit is hilarious. And just kind of like do all that. So but yes, I think this is all the time that we have to talk about the Muppet Christmas Carol. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you everyone for joining us. It's been wonderful and amazing and beautiful and awesome. Jen, where can we find you on the socials? Where can we see you? What's going on in your life?
I am, as usual, always busy with my cosplay group that I help manage. We are the Avengers Initiative at Avengers Cosplay on Instagram. We just finished a long weekend at LA Comic Con, and we have lots of fun events coming up for the holiday season. You can find us at the Citadel on the 18th. We will be there supporting the Highway Patrol's Chips for Kids campaign. And personally, you can find me on Instagram at do_as_Peggy says. Peggy, like Peggy Carter, who is the main character I cosplay.
Yay! Okay, so I already told you this. You know, I've been wanting to cosplay. And
that's right.
I would love to show up on the 8th, or I'd love to come out on the 18th and support. So
absolutely. That's one
like,
of our best events every year. I love it.
I live like 10 minutes away from the Citadel, so
perfect. Perfect.
Yes. Yay! So come and show up, people. Help support wonderful and amazing things. Eric, where can we find you? What's going on in your life?
Work. That's all I do is work. But you can find me on all socials, on Instagram, TikTok, everything at Heartless7. That's HARTL3SS7 across the board. But yeah, no, I'll be here. This is where I'm at. This is what I do.
Wait, were you doubling in the Twitch chat and telling us what to do?
Yes.
You person. It was him.
I just told us to hide because we all needed to hide for that procurement. So
yeah, that's true. We did.
You know what? I'm tired of this buffoonery going on. As usual, y'all, you can find me on Instagram at CityOfStars13. I post funny stories. I don't really post posts because I don't know. It takes too much time to curate posts and do all that shit. So I just rather do a story and I'm done. It's there for an hour or a day and it's great. But yes, other than that, it has been wonderful to see you all. It's wonderful to have your wonderful energy into what we do here at Nom Talk Network. So yeah, definitely. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going, as well as subscribing to our platforms. All of them are at Nom Talk Network. Tune into our next show, which is going to be Friday. We are going to be doing a review of Love Actually, which is one of my favorite films. It's so beautiful, wonderful, and amazing. I've said beautiful, wonderful, and amazing 8 times tonight, so I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. But yes, tune in, and we will be doing a awesome review of that. I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and you all have a nom-orific evening. Good night.
Bye.